What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Jackson Hover podcast with our first special guest, Kyle Bumpers in the flesh. Kyle, thank you for joining us.
No problem. The least I could do.
Let's go. So, it's over, man. It's so over. Played their most functional game of the season against UCF, and we talked about what needed to happen for them to beat Tennessee. We thought that Tennessee would beat Florida, honestly, like 49-14 or 49-7. They didn't do that, and Florida actually looked good on defense. Maybe even great. I don't know. But they did play really well. The offense was another story. The special teams both saved and killed Florida. And at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to coaching. Topher, initial thoughts on the Tennessee loss.
It's funny. They kind of built on everything we saw them do well against UCF, and it looked like repeatable improvements were being made that could be signs of kind of a program restructuring and proofs of concept moving forward. Uh, and then they still did the same Billy Napier nonsense of horrible communication mistakes, terrible special teams mistakes, weird, baffling things that you can't really explain in any other way than I guess it's a Billy Napier team, and that just kind of happens here. Um, like the fact that they scored 3 points in the first half, despite getting into Tennessee territory every single time, is inexcusable. The field goal at the end of the half is crazy inexcusable. Fumbling on the goal line can't happen. And these are just things that happen under Billy Napier teams, and they kill you. Um, and it's just frustrating because it's like, what more can you do? The players are doing the thing. Like the defense is executing at a high level. Defense is playing well. Uh, Offense is playing pretty well. Both quarterbacks were good until Graham got hurt. Receivers are really good. Um, but there's just so many mistakes that are almost 100% coaching mistakes that it's just like, what more are you supposed to do at this point?
Yeah, it really just feels like it's coaching and like it's so painful, or I guess not painful. I'm not having physical pain from this, but it is pretty heartbreaking to see these players. Like you can actually tell like the effort they're showing and they are trying and all of this and like they're so every so often they'll make a big play. Like you'll see Badger go out and make a big play. You'll see some of these defense guys make a big play, and it's like this coaching just won't do anything to help. I think it was. I want to say it was a former Florida reporter, Brandon Carroll tweeted this out, which I thought was just so on the nose, which was uh, the players, work so hard for a dub, but Billy Napier clawed and scratched for a loss. And it's like, I can't think of any other way to describe it than that. Because I mean, like you said, like 12 men on the field, and Billy's explanation for the field goal at the end of the first half was basically uh I think he said it was because there was an injured player on the last play and
But
Sam was still on
but
the field for some reason.
but the thing is like the penalty shouldn't have mattered because they should have had a timeout, but they had to burn a timeout with a stopped clock because they weren't lined up properly.
Which is just like we have the special teams mad people. What are we doing? What are we doing? I don't understand it. Kyle, initial thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it was just the coaching and the discipline. The lack thereof kind of shines in all the big moments. Um, and that's why you blow such a close game. You can't have those kinds of mistakes when the team's playing pretty well, like football wise. You just have those silly mistakes that ruin some of your best opportunities for points. And I'm sure we'll go into it more, but the overtime period is just just a complete disaster. You can't really draw it up worse than that.
Yeah.
And it just shows in times like that even if the guys are playing well, there's a one mistake and then there's another mistake and then there's a bad call, and then there's another mistake, and you find yourself losing a close game to someone that you could have beat. Tennessee was it was apparently a winnable game, and they found a way to lose it, which is pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
And like, that's the thing. And to your point where it's like the play calling every single time where it's like Billy does his best to have a game where like you like the play calling and you can see proof of concept of how his scheme can work. And in the moment you think you can believe a little bit, he has a game like Tennessee where you're like, oh, this will never, ever, ever work at a consistent basis where Florida can be a winning program. Because the decisions he makes just frankly don't make sense sometimes. Like using Graham Mertz on QB dive when you have a 240-pound quarterback. Like the jet sweep was fine on the 4th and 1 that Trey Wilson got tackled short. Like I don't necessarily hate the play call, but I also don't get it when again you have a 240-pound quarterback and it's 4th and 1. You also have Jaden Baugh, who is kind of a wrecking ball of a running back. And I guess, the biggest blunder, in my opinion, of the night, other than the field goal, and I guess we could talk about it now because Graham's injury happened before, but that's more of the big picture rest of the season. So I want to start talking with the whack ass formation that Billy Napier ran onto the field and then proceeded to then just kick the extra point to tie it and essentially just send it to overtime. Topher, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about play calling issues, a lot of people have said it, and kind of bring it up. It's not the play calling writ large, it's really the play calling in situational or red zone situations. Um, it's just really funky. Like you said, the 2 point kind of stupid nonsense. I was watching the game with my dad and I said, they're going to line up with the stupidest nonsense you've ever seen in your entire life right here. And then they did it and they got bailed out by a timeout. Um, they get so complicated because the scheme itself is fine.
Yeah.
They were getting a lot of good stuff the way they were designing the run game, getting good push with some of their inside zone action. The play action game is really, really good and helps out both quarterbacks a lot. The screen game is usually pretty fine if it's executed well, but it's just situational on a big third down, red zone, goal line. It's just like, what are we doing, guys? And it
It's
just makes you lose your mind.
quick note on that. Like, it just feels like it's impossible for Billy Napier to play behind schedule too. Like, besides that DJ Lagway touchdown throw, which was incredible, how many times does Florida get behind the sticks and you're like, oh God, what are they gonna do? What can they do here besides just try and make it a 4th and short and punt and kick a field goal? Because like it's rough. The third down play calling when they are not ahead of schedule is it doesn't look pretty. I will say that.
No,
But
it's bad.
man, I just don't understand why you don't go for two there. I don't get it. And maybe they would have ran a play if Tennessee doesn't call a timeout, maybe they run a play with that formation. But like I just can't take it seriously that you are going on the road against the number 8 team in the country and you have a chance to take the lead with like a minute or it was less than a minute left and you run that formation out thinking you have a like actual chance to score points there.
Well, they were daring the number 8
Yeah.
team in the country to score.
Exactly.
Like I to me it's my biggest issue with that fake 2 point conversion, then 1 point conversion. My biggest issue with it was Billy was acting like he's smarter than everybody else in the room. And it's how I feel watching how Sean Payton works sometimes, not to make it about myself. But like, before the draft, he's like, we wanted everyone to think we were drafting JJ, and then they draft Bo. And in this case, it's gassing himself up by faking the 2 point conversion, throwing something wacky out there. In the end, I guess it accomplished what he wanted it to accomplish, right? They used a timeout and cool. They had one less on that last drive for the 30 seconds they had the ball. But I think at that point you just have the balls or you don't. I would like to just see you go for it. But I understand being conservative in a sense. I guess he thought he was playing with fire and wasn't confident taking that shot, but I'd rather the 50-50 odds than stringing together a good enough drive to take care of it in the red zone, like we've talked about.
Yeah, because I mean that's the thing, and like we'll talk a little bit more about the overtime, but it's just like the fact that he thinks he's playing 40 chess by baiting Tennessee into a timeout, and then he said in the press conference like why he decided just to go and kick the extra point is that like he trusted his team, he thought they were playing well, um, and he wanted to play some more football, and it's like how as a coach at the SEC level, how do you not understand that giving the home team, top 10 team in the country, more football is like the exact opposite thing you should be doing? And like, if you watch that game, you're like, okay, where are the what's the biggest struggle on offense? They can get to the red zone, they can't score points. What's the biggest struggle for the defense? They've been great all night, but once Tennessee finally cracks the red zone, they've scored every time. So what do we want to do in overtime? Have a red zone possession on offense that we can't score and try and stop Tennessee in the red zone. And I'm like, I don't get it. And it's like the defense did play well the whole game, even if they gave up some points in the end. But it's like, what was your offense doing that gave you confidence that they could have a shootout possibly in overtime? I just don't get it. I mean, Topher, you have
Yeah,
any thoughts on that?
what I'll say is I obviously don't agree with the decision to go for overtime and not just go for two there. I think the logic tracks if you're the less talented team with a situation to win it on one play versus in an overtime, you go for it 100% of the time. But I think if I understand Billy Napier's logic, and I think it's pretty easy to understand how he thinks because it's all pretty coherent, even if it's wrong. Uh, he believes truly that his team was better than Tennessee all game, and that his team compares with Tennessee in a talent, athleticism kind of profile. And honestly, he's not like wrong per se about that. They did kick Tennessee's ass like pretty much all night. The
They
defense was dominating up front. The back end was fine for the most part. The offensive line was occasionally pretty good, but overall pretty decent offensively as well. The problem is like I can say that and say this decision sort of makes sense, but at the end of the day, like this is the same Florida team that got waxed by A&M, that got waxed by Miami, that hasn't had a winning season since the pandemic. Like that's all true. And like the reality is the reality, and you have to just take that shot. And honestly, even if these teams are level, I kind of want to just take the shot anyway because it shows some gumption, shows some belief in your team to just go out and win the damn thing.
especially too like and I get your point for like they did play better for most of the night, but it's also like how do you not have the situational awareness to be like, okay, besides that like miracle touchdown throw, that was nice. I won't say miracle, but that touchdown throw Lagway had, like he gets thrown into the fire and he's like just not playing well. They moved James Pierce to the side where the Florida has a rotating door at O line. Najee Harris looks a little lost out there. And like he's wrecking everything. And Lagway just cannot get into a rhythm because he's like the only guy now and he's your freshman on the road. And then to again decide like, hey, sure, we'll throw him into an overtime. Like, just from personal experience, I was at the Dylan Rayola overtime game against Illinois. I saw how that turned out. It was terrible. He was not good in that drive. Like, I don't see how you trust. I mean, I guess it's kudos to Billy for having confidence in his freshman, but it's also like your whole mantra, scared money, don't make money. So that's all I'll say.
I hate that mantra. I hate it so much. It's the kind of thing that every time I see him do something cowardly, I think it in my head. And I thought it a couple times in that game on Saturday. I I I'm so sick of the scared money don't make money thing. And I hate that it was such a prolific thing when he came here. It was like, oh, remember the scared money don't make money thing?
Yeah, it's rough.
There's a lot of scared money.
There is a lot of scared money on the field. There was scared money on that extra. Um, I want to talk about the Graham Mertz injury because that means that DJ Lagway supposedly officially has the keys for the rest of the season. The injury did not look good. I don't think we've seen the severity of the update yet. We'll probably see it later today when the press conference happens. I would assume. So 2 QB system with him and Clay Millen. I'm just kidding. It looks like it'll be DJ Lagway for the rest of the way. Unless he falls off a cliff, playing wise, not literally. And will be the guy. So Topher, initial thoughts on DJ Lagway taking over.
Yeah, so we've kind of been clamoring for it just because he's so exciting, so tantalizing. But I think, again, understanding Billy Napier's logic, I think he was kind of justified in how he handled it with what we saw Saturday. Um, the 2 QB system, as silly as it kind of was, it worked and it got the best out of both guys. DJ got to make plays and help the offense be explosive in moments. Graham, super reliable, super consistent, can handle big moments, big atmospheres. DJ, for as much as we love him, for as good as he is, you saw the playmaking ability and the kind of the special talent with the touchdown throw to DK, but he was kind of a deer in headlights lost most of the game once Graham went down. And that was his first time playing in a real big boy college football game. Obviously, he got in against Mississippi State, got in against UCF, played a little bit against A&M and Miami, but you know, competitive one score game in front of 100,000 fans on the road. Like that's what it looks like to be the quarterback at the University of Florida. And I think he will be a great one, but he's not quite ready to be great yet. Um, but at the same time, like we know what Florida is, so it's fine. And you can let him learn and fail. Um, the key is going to be having the pieces around him help him. I think there were enough plays in that game where he's kind of getting sold by an offensive line L or running back mistake or whatever. So if the rest of the pieces can kind of rally around him and he can help lead them with his explosiveness, his ability in the run game, there's a lot to like, but it is a little scary because of what you saw Saturday and his very freshman looking performance.
Yeah. I will say, as I noticed on rewatch, DJ still made some decisions were very freshman of him, but I will give him some benefit of the doubt due to the fact that Tennessee, when Graham was playing in the first half, they really didn't use James Pierce Jr., their like possible number 1 overall pick edge rusher, a lot. Like he was not a 3 down guy. And when he did play, he was rushing at Barber and Najee Harris, which is like theoretically the best side of Florida's offensive line. And the moment Graham goes down and it's just DJ, James Pierce is more of a 3 down edge rusher, and he's rushing right at Crenshaw Dixon and Damian George, who is a rotating door. Or he would do this one thing that was absolutely nasty work, where he'd rush from that side, and Crenshaw and Damian George would be so concerned with him that they'd try and double team, but then he'd drop back. 2 guys would step up and take 1-on-1 with those linemen. Jake Slaughter would already be moving over though to try and help with Pierce, and then Pierce would then come back around and just come right through the middle because Najee Harris doesn't have the awareness to look right, and it would just be a free shot at Lagway, and it was pretty nasty work. It was incredible adjustment by Josh Heupel, whoever their defensive coordinator is, to use such a game wrecker, but it really just kind of destroyed a lot of what Florida was trying to do in that second half, and taking advantage of a freshman quarterback who's going to make freshman quarterback decisions. Kyle, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean that's the test of the sign of a good coach,
Yeah.
right? The first half did not go Tennessee's way. Like they didn't look particularly good.
Yeah.
And you started to wonder if Florida could pull off the upset. And then if you're able to make adjustments, that's how you know you've got a solid coach. As someone who watches a lot of Gator games, we don't often see that. But credit to Pierce and Tennessee. Pierce is just an awesome player. So if you can get him more involved and give him easier looks, then yeah, he's going to be able to mess up some play, especially when you've got a freshman quarterback in there.
Yeah.
As much as Graham is a little, he doesn't have the same physical abilities. He does have the experience. So even though you would expect Lagway to be able to maybe do a little bit more on his feet, get away from that kind of pressure, he's not looking for the same things that Graham Mertz is looking at. So good adjustment for Tennessee, but
Yeah. And thankfully, like he does have the Kentucky game next, so Kentucky's defense is pretty good, but like you expect him to bounce back from this Tennessee game, especially since it's at home, get Kentucky. Uh, it would be very brutal if it was kind of an AR situation with Dan Mullen where he threw him out into the fire against Georgia for his first ever start. That would be very tough. But he's already played pretty much every game since he started against Samford, and he'll start against Kentucky. Uh, I don't have high hopes for that Georgia game just in general. We will see. But I don't know. I'm curious what it'll look like for the rest of the year. I think Billy Napier will be able to maybe expand his playbook a little bit because I definitely think we see more of the downfield passing game when DJ is in the game. But also at the same time, since he's now the full-time guy and teams will fully scout him, I'm curious how much he's going to rein that in and try and get him to play a little bit more conservatively rather than kind of how it's been where it's like we're going to have Graham as the guy who like knows how to game manage a lot of dink and dunk stuff, but then we can have DJ as in this third, sixth drive where it's like, okay, just run a go route. How fast can you run? And let's see how far DJ can throw it. Um,
Yeah,
with
and I actually to that point, I think what you'll see is even less structured dynamism and more just manufacturing explosives out of DJ being DJ. The play that really tells me more about DJ's ability to do that than even the touchdown is there was one of his first plays of the game. It might have been his very first play on the third series of the game. He throws a downfield ball. It's like a 15-yard completion to Chim Dike. And that ball, looking at it first time, I don't think that's even in the progression. I think that's just like a quick alert if you like it, throw it kind of play. And DK almost doesn't look ready for it until it's on him. And great play by him. He's a great player. But that's something Graham Mertz would like almost never, ever, ever do. And certainly not do it well. So the ability to just kind of read space and kind of just hoop is something Graham Mertz just doesn't have. And DJ has a lot of it. And I think that's something that's going to be really fun and exciting and just add a level of dynamism that the offense really hasn't had since Anthony Richardson 2 years ago.
that's true. I know. And I am excited to see it. And it's kind of what I've been saying for a while now. I mean, it's a whole different idea. It's a whole different perspective if they had won that Tennessee game and they're 4-2 and you have a big win over a top 10 team. But I mean, the coaching wasn't there. They didn't make the adjustments they needed to make. And they lost and they're 3-3. And it's like, well, if you were going to try and make the insane playoff run, it needed to start on Saturday. And there's not really like you kind of just want to play for a bowl game, period. There's not really necessarily one good one that you want to play for. So, you know, let's see what our freshman quarterback can do. Getting real minutes now since he is going to be the future of this program. You would hope if he does not transfer after this year. Um, but yeah, it does suck seeing Graham go. As many qualms and criticisms I had with him as a player, he was a great dude and he was a fun dude to talk to in press conferences. So it is a shame to see him go out like this with a non-contact injury that looks to be pretty severe, if I had to guess. So that just really sucks. Just to have your football career in that way, is never what you want. So I do feel bad for Graham. As many criticisms as I had him as a player. Topher, Kyle, anything to the Graham Mertz
yeah,
injury?
I mean, I've talked to Jackson about this, off pod. And I was a little torn on the Mertz Lagway thing. Maybe I'm an old head, but I like the idea of your senior kind of getting to finish it out. And I didn't think his play was bad enough to justify a coup. But I get it. You look at Lagway and the way the ball comes off of his hand, it just looks different. Like it doesn't really take a scientist or a extreme NFL analyst to understand that when DJ Lagway throws the football, it looks really good. And like Topher, you said, the ability to understand space, I think when you have that kind of arm and you're confident in that kind of arm, you're willing to look for different kinds of windows, look into different spaces. And with Mertz, it was very much just we knew what it was going to be. With Lagway, there's just something there, and we're trying to figure out what that can develop into. But it sucks to see Mertz go out for an extended amount of time. You know, his presence is definitely something that I'll be curious to see what if DJ can replace that, especially in those big moments. It felt like even though Mertz would have a mistake from time to time, you didn't worry necessarily if he had the ball and you needed to get something going. But it's hard to feel as confident when you're relying on a freshman, even if they're an extreme athlete and an awesome player. So, I will be very excited to see how Lagway develops. And I'm sad to see Mertz kind of just taken out of the picture forcibly like this. But still feeling optimistic that DJ can show some good stuff and hopefully feel confident in this offense going forward, as into other years. So, yeah.
Topher, any thoughts? Any closing thoughts on that?
No, not really, but I think to echo the point, Graham Mertz did pretty well at Florida, certainly better than expected. I had my personal beefs just with him, especially last year. I just was kind of out on the guy. He seemed kind of phony to me, but I don't know. He seems like a pretty genuine guy at this point. Everyone has great things to say about him. He's probably going to end up Colin Kleining this thing and be like an offensive coordinator in like 4 years. So I'll look forward to seeing him somewhere on a Power Five staff in the very near future.
Future Florida quarterbacks coach.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I will say this is unrelated necessarily to Graham Mertz, but I saw a tweet about him, like just being like, sad to see him go out this way. Like, he'll always be a Gator. They posted a video of him. I don't remember what game it was, but he scores a rushing touchdown and he has like the baton they used to celebrate with, and he's like hitting it like a baseball bat. Did they get rid of that? Because I have
True,
not,
right? I haven't seen it.
which is like, Billy, you're so boring, bro. You can't even have the touchdown baton thing that you brought over from Louisiana. Come on, bro.
Anti-fun.
He's
Anti-fun.
taking away everything because it doesn't have a winning culture yet, and he's not doing anything to bring a winning culture.
Great stuff we got going on.
It's really tough. So, I mean, I don't know where you go from here. I don't know why you keep Billy Napier. I mean, do you have anything else you want to say on the game, Topher?
I mean, I just want to dive a little bit more into the defense
Yeah,
because
let's talk about it.
there's some pretty good stuff that we've been talking about for a while that just is super provable and just kind of is what we're at now. I think it starts up front. We've had our issues with Florida's defensive front for a while now, but I think I can definitively say they've got some dudes. I've been on the Caleb Banks train for a few weeks, and he just continues to look excellent. That's an NFL player, about it in my mind. Probably one of the better defensive tackles in the SEC right now. He's really good. He's disruptive. He's athletic. He's big, but not cartoonishly big. Um, Cam Jackson's finally playing, and he's playing really well. Uh, and the big thing for me is the edge guys are finally doing anything.
Yeah,
It
that's
feels like Florida's had one good edge rusher in like the last 5 years, and it was Princely Umanmielen, who's now at Ole Miss. And they finally have some other guys doing some stuff, and it's the weird random guys. It's George Gums from Northern Illinois. It's Brian Taylor from community college, JUCO guy.
Glenn College. Remember the
Yeah, so getting these guys to really produce off the edge, and I know Tennessee's offensive line is kind of in shambles right now, but that's so, so huge because that's been Florida's biggest defensive weakness. Like the safeties are still terrible. There are issues on the back end, but having the ability to disrupt the game in the front four and the front seven is so, so huge. And that changes the math for everything Florida does or defensively.
Yeah, and like the thing, like we've talked a lot about how we've become the number one podcast supporting Jason Marshall. It's like I like Jason Marshall, and like when he can stay healthy, I really like Devin Moore. Like he had a really nice pass breakup against Tennessee on Saturday, and it's like it's like that's a good pairing at corner. And the issue is like they look so much worse than they do because they get exposed because their defensive line can't get any pressure, and whichever quarterback they're playing can sit in the pocket for a year, sip his coffee, read the morning paper, and then he can find a dot, 40 yards down the field because no one's pressuring. And now it's like, oh my God, Tyreek Sapp in the backfield. Oh my God, you know, Jack Pyburn blowing up a play. And it's just like, I will say one thing. Uh, Austin Armstrong has supposedly taken, it looks like he's taken over play calling again. It looks like he's been calling like for the past 3 games. And we've been saying the defense has looked pretty good the past 3 games. So, Kyle, thoughts on the defense?
Yeah, I think when you have one of your strengths is having a couple corners that people seem to like, right? You need the front to play. You need them to be involved because Jason Marshall cannot do everything. He cannot do it all. And the more the defensive line is penetrating, the less he has to do. You can play man coverage. You can let the defense get there, trust Jason Marshall, just stop his man for a couple seconds, give the D line some time. Um, when everything's kind of meshing like that, it makes everybody's jobs easier.
Yeah.
Now the Austin Armstrong thing, we'll see. Like if they can keep it up, that'd be awesome. If you can find ways to get the safeties in some better spots, that would be great. But no, I mean it's been pretty solid over the past few games, and I think Tennessee was a pretty interesting test for that. With Nico, just his physical profile, that's someone that you kind of have to, you can't really just not consider any part of the field.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a pretty good test, and for the majority of the game, they held up pretty well.
And I have one more thing about the defense. It's kind of related to the way it's called by Armstrong or Ron Roberts or whoever it is I think the last 2 weeks presented a challenge that forced Florida to simplify for the better. So against UCF, who theoretically is a tempo team, a lot of similar run actions out of the same sets, right? Tennessee, lots of tempo, play very wide, all these things. They force you to play a lot of base defense and a lot of simple defense because of the tempo and the types of groupings and formations you're getting. And I think forcing Florida to stop doing all the stupid nonsense defensively is letting the players play better. You're not seeing dumb zone blitzes that don't make any sense. You're not seeing weird blitzes from depth that don't make any sense. You're not seeing weird man coverage assignments that don't make any sense. All of that nonsense that was flooded in the A&M game and the Miami game, that's mostly gone the last two. I think a lot of it is because they're game planning to Tennessee and to UCF, which allows them to play simple. And when the guys play simple, they're good football players that can make good football plays. They were just being put in terrible, weird spots that were not working.
It is shocking when you play better defense when you don't play Jason Marshall as a linebacker, who then blitz off the opposite edge he's lined up at. But that's just me. That's just me noticing. I will say one final thought on the defense just from me. Austin Armstrong, you might be the GOAT. I am withholding honey for now, but we'll see in 2 weeks that I might be pouring honey on you, GOAT. We'll see. Topher, Kyle, any other thoughts on the defense?
No.
Okay. I mean, we've talked about the game a lot. Billy Napier's still the coach. What does this team do, man? I mean, they're 3-3. They're 1-2 in SEC play. Recruiting is still sucks. I saw a bunch of guys commit not to Florida over the weekend. Where do they go from here? I really don't know. I mean, we've seen promising signs from the defense, but other than that,
I mean, look, man, you're one win against Georgia or Texas away from saving the season, right?
yeah, that's true. That is technically true.
You go into Austin, beat the number one team in the country, that certainly changes the math. Or you go into Jacksonville and you beat Georgia for the first time in 5 years, that changes the math. But no, like to your point, this team's cooked. I respect how they've played under Billy Napier, and that's why I'm fine not firing him yet, especially because a lot of the coaches you'd want to go after, it might be hard to hire them right away anyway, just because of the expanded playoff. So, like, I get it. You can have him still coach for another 4 games. Who cares? Doesn't really make a difference. Like, what's the worst case scenario? You're good, so you keep him. Like, that's fine. I'm fine with that. It would to beat these teams it would require such a significant change in attitude and execution that it proves that the process is working anyway. So it's whatever. At least they're playing competitive football, so that's pretty cool.
My only gripe with keeping him for now, because like I do agree that it's like what's really the point is that I would at least like somebody, not Billy Napier, to start doing literally anything on the trail. Like I don't want to keep just continuing to harp on this, but like man, it's 8 recruits. Everyone else in the top 8 has 20 or more. Billy
Yeah,
cannot get away with
it's
it.
it's bleak out there, and it like we said last week, it just reeks of a cooked staff knowing it's cooked. Um, and but also if you fire him, it's not like the interim staff is going to recruit either. So it kind of is what it is.
I don't know, man. Put Jabbar Jaluk out there, see what happens. Kyle, thoughts on the cooked status of Florida at the moment?
Yeah, so I think, like Topher said, I don't really think you're going to accomplish anything by cutting ties sooner rather than later. You know, recruiting is a weird level and to figure out how that plays into like an early fire. Because there's a lot that goes on behind doors, behind closed doors that we don't really get to see. So outside of that, on like just a pure football standpoint, maybe things somehow get better with another coach. But the way I see it, like you said, the players are playing pretty hard. And if you're going to be a bad team, at least you want the players to play hard. And if the players are playing hard, it shows that Billy hasn't totally lost them. Um, so let him have a few more games with them is my take. But you know, if your head coach candidate, let's just say it's I don't know, Nick Saban, and he just joins the staff immediately, and he can just start recruiting immediately. Sure, whatever, go for it. But assuming you're not pulling off a miracle and you're pulling someone from the pool of teams that are actively playing games, you're not really going to accomplish much on that front. So I'm fine letting it stand. But you know, if they get really impatient, I guess that would be why you cut ties immediately. I would rather just see it out, let him play some more games, and accept your fate at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I would say though to like that point where it's like the guys are playing hard for Billy Napier, but then like that just bums me out more because it's like you're playing so hard and it's your head coach making non-adjustments and dumb decisions that are causing your hard work to go to waste. And so I hate keep watching these games, watching their hard work go to waste because they have a head coach who is just fundamentally letting them down. And I also think it's funny that like most of the time I feel like when you don't want to fire a head coach early, it's like you don't want to fire a head coach early because you don't want the recruiting fallout. But like Florida simply like cannot have a recruiting fallout because they don't have recruits to fall out. Period. Um, and so I don't know. I just it just feels like a lost season. They're 3-3. Like they can still easily they can make a bowl game, but like it just feels like there doesn't really seem to be a point in keeping him or not keeping him around. He's just quite literally a lame duck coach who just kind of happens to be here for however many more games. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So let's move into the next segment. Voting more coaches off the island. We're shrinking the mega board. We're shrinking the hot board down. We are getting down. So since we have Kyle on, we'll give him a pick, Topher's pick, and my pick. Topher, let's start with you this time. Who is your pick?
Yeah, I'm actually going to take a big name off the board because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the nonsense. I'm not entertaining the Lincoln Riley thing anymore. Uh,
No.
he was kind of a pipe dream coach anyway, but like, no, no, thank you. I'm out, completely out. The USC thing's been kind of an abject failure to this point. They were underwhelming with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. They are extremely underwhelming with a perfectly fine quarterback. Um, they keep losing in kind of unfathomable ways. And no, thank you. No more Lincoln Riley. Get him out of here.
Lincoln, I will never give up on you. Go to Cal. Lincoln Riley, go to Cal. Um, my vote this week. I'm taking who's a coach who I'm not a fan of. Oh, a guy that we both agreed we should have voted off last week. Ken Womack, Alabama defensive coordinator. Not ready. Not ready at all.
Maybe just not good also.
Yeah, also probably just not a good coordinator. Um, I mean, what's Bama's defense doing, man?
They just stink, I guess.
They're
Like
not
they're bad, they're not good.
like I could have other than Travaris Robinson innocent. I really could have voted off either of the other coordinators or either of those coordinators because like Glenn Schumann, I mean Georgia's defense, 31 points to Mississippi State. What happened? That Florida one looks better though. When Florida gave up all those rushing yards to Mississippi State, and they gave up more points to a backup quarterback. I'm noticing. I'm noticing.
Georgia's on fraud watch. Florida's
Transit
gonna win that game.
will definitely apply to the Florida Georgia game. Is all
Absolutely. It always does.
exactly. Kyle, do you have a pick for who you would like to vote?
So has anyone on tier 3 been voted off yet?
I just voted off Kane Womack.
Okay. That was who I was gonna go with. I would say Barry Odom.
Whoa. You're not feeling the UNLV
I
juice?
respect it because I also was not really fucking with Barry Odom.
For me, I'm sure you guys have more layered thoughts on this, but I want someone with a decent amount of experience at a high level. That's my big thing. You know, the Lane Kiffin is the elephant that's gonna be in the room until that either happens or doesn't happen. But I just want someone that can come in who's gonna raise the floor. At this current moment, I'm not really concerned about raising the ceiling as much. Like I think it was you, Topher, said this in like the first coaches pod. But I want someone before we can worry about a national championship, we need to worry about winning 8 or 9 games. So that's what I would switch my focus to.
Yeah. No, I respect the pick. I Barry Odom, he's doing great things at UNLV, but I don't think I'll ever get the how bad he was in Missouri as head coach taste out of my mouth. I cannot lie because that was not great.
That's fair. That's fair. Before you get out of hot board talk, the Jeff Brom stock is rising. I'm noticing people are embracing the Brom agenda. So keep an eye on Brom, the Brom Hive.
The thing about Jeff Brom is I don't think he'd ever want to leave Louisville.
Yeah, but give him a bag though.
You could give him Jeff Brom stock up, Kurt Signetti stock up.
Rhett Lashley stock up eternally.
Red Lashley stock up. Red Lashley stock so high he might be tier 1 now.
Hey, on my original top 25, he was number 21, and he's definitely in the top 10 now. So
he's top 5 for me. I cannot lie. He's my guy. So Lincoln Riley go to Cal, Lane Kiffin come to Florida. It's not going to work in Oxford. It's not going to work in LA. Come to Berkeley. Come to Gainesville. Yeah. I guess any closing thoughts on Florida in general?
they stink, but they play hard, so that's cool.
That is cool. They do play hard. That is nice to have. Kyle?
Really happy and excited about the direction of this team because there is certainly a direction.
Let's go. DJ Lagway, save us. Topher, Notre Dame won this week. Would you like to give thoughts?
Yeah, so Stanford sucks. They've sucked for like a decade. It feels like it's really only been 5 years, but boy, oh boy, it's been a bad 5 years. 2 years ago, an even worse Stanford team beat Notre Dame at home. For a second, it looked like that might happen again because they went up 7-0 early.
Yeah.
And then Notre Dame just beat the shit out of them the rest of the game, so it was fine. Defense is the best in the country. Riley Leonard is good now. The offensive line, work in progress, but we're getting there.
The Riley Leonard roller coaster of emotions.
Dude, he was so bad in week 2, but he's fine now. I think he was just injured. It's fine.
He's back to fine quarterback. Flip side, Cal might be putting me in a worse spot mental health wise than Florida. Oh my God, I hate watching that team play football. Oh my God, does Justin Wilcox make even dumber decisions than Billy Napier? Lincoln Riley, please. Lincoln Riley, please come to Cal. Join the Calgorithm. We will protect you.
That's also what kind of devil magic does Pitt have this year? This is the third game they've played where they absolutely should have lost, and yet they're 6-0.
I don't get it, man. I don't understand that team fundamentally.
Pat Narduzzi to Gainesville. That's what I
I
understand.
don't know.
But he's the godfather of hot zone defense.
Let's build a staff out of these Army and Navy teams.
You know what? Jeff Monk into the swamp. That's what I'm hearing.
He would be sick.
He's won here before.
Bring him in. Okay. Last thing. Funniest interim head coach pick for Florida. Now that Brandon Spikes is no longer on the website. My pick is Will Harris, and he can post little chest meme emojis every time they win a game. Topher, your turn.
So like, is it too easy to say it's obviously Dan Enos?
Oh my God, I forgot Danny this was on spot. Dude, why? Why does he?
So I'm gonna go a tie between Dan Enos and Ron Roberts as terrible SEC assistants that are somehow here for some reason.
I don't get the way Billy Napier built his staff, man. That alone.
Hey, but shout out Jabbar Jalouk and shout out Billy Gonzalez. They do the thing. They're pretty good.
Okay, and also Austin Armstrong's supposed innocent so far. I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm withholding the honey for now, but I'm just putting it out there. That might be my guy. Kyle, do you have a pick?
If you can't play, let him coach Graham Mertz.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. And that's the perfect way we'll end it. So thank you for listening to another episode. Kyle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Topher, thank you. All right. Thank you for listening.